My name is Reese Callahan. I'm 34 years old. And last week, I watched my sister stand on a podium, receive a medal, and smile for cameras, while my name didn't even make the guest list. There wasn't a message, no invitation, not a single wish you were here. Just silence. That's how it always starts. Quiet, casual, like forgetting is a technical error. But silence can do more damage than words ever could. They thought I'd stay erased, that they could rewrite the record, scrub my name from the files, reduce my service to a footnote, downgrade my rank to a rumor. And maybe I would have let them. If not for one thing, I remember. I remember every mission they buried, every line of code they deleted, every uniform they pinned on my sister, wearing the shine I earned. I didn't come back for applause. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back for proof. Because you can take away a title. You can take away a medal. But you don't get to take my name. Not anymore. The group message thread buzzed with balloon emojis and praise. Mom had pinned a photo of Samantha in uniform, saluting in front of the base flagpole. I stared at the screen, the Florida heat pooling through the blinds onto my floor, doing little to warm me. They were all there. Dad's cheesy thumbs up, Aunt Lorraine's, proud of you, baby girl. Even my old high school cousin Matt, who never spelled anything right. Not one mention of me. No, wish you were here. No check-in. Not even a typoed tag. Just silence. I set the phone down gently on the counter like it was something toxic. Last Thanksgiving, Mom had said, "We're so proud of Samantha. Finally, someone who brings honor to the Callahan name." I'd laughed then, thinking it was a clumsy compliment. It stings now, the way alcohol stings a reopened wound. I opened the cupboard above the sink and reached for the small wooden box tucked behind a half-empty cereal bag. The metal inside still had the crease marks from the ribbon, perfectly folded from the day I left the base. I'd never hung it, never shown anyone. It wasn't even for them. But even now it felt like something I had to hide, like something they never truly believed I earned. The silence of the apartment wrapped around me. The walls, still bare from when I moved in 6 months ago, echoed faintly as I paced. I pressed call on Mom's contact before I could think too hard. It rang 4 times. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. Sweet, but clipped. "I just saw the messages," I started. "Sam's promotion. That's big." Yes, we're very proud." There was no follow-up, no invitation, no question of how I was, no room to wedge myself in. I guess I wasn't invited. Well, it was complicated, Reese. You know how these ceremonies go, mostly for active duty. Her voice trailed off, then stiffened. And it's been a while. Right. I'd been discharged. Honorably. Quietly. Not because I wanted to be. I didn't argue. I just said, "Got it," and ended the call before she could say something that would push me over the edge. I stared at my phone, hands numb, then placed its screen down. The silence returned, heavier now. It wasn't until evening that the notification pinged. Jonah, of all people. We hadn't spoken since my last deployment. The message was short. "Jonah, there's something you should know." I didn't respond right away. My first instinct was to ignore it. My second was to assume it was some pity outreach. A half-hearted olive branch from someone who used to know me. But curiosity is a sharp blade. Eventually, I typed back, "Tell me everything." The typing dots appeared, paused, then vanished. Then came the reply. "Samantha's internal file doesn't list you as her sister. Your name's not there at all." The message sat like a loaded weapon in my palm. Not there at all? I didn't answer. I walked over to the desk, the same one I used to write reports at in the dark, humming hum of my old bass. I pulled out the laptop I hadn't touched in over a year. It was still scuffed from the road trip that brought me here. I opened it. The screen blinked. The login prompt appeared. I typed in a password I hadn't used since the week I left. The cursor spun. Then, Reese opens her computer, types in a password to access a long-delayed account, and succeeds. Family can bury you deeper than any enemy ever could. The blue glow of the laptop lit my face as the rest of the apartment stayed dark. I hadn't moved in over an hour, fingers still on the trackpad, eyes stuck on the summary of what used to be my service record. It was there, but barely. My rank had been demoted to first lieutenant. The commendation for Operation Night Trace? Gone. No reference to the 6-month survival training I led in Arizona. No mention of the team I commanded or the encrypted mission logs I had once risked my life to compile. Just lines of empty citations, like a ghost version of myself. I scrolled slower, looking for the glitch, the missing link that might explain it. Maybe it was an error. Maybe the files hadn't synced. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. I opened a secure call window and tapped Jonah's contact. He answered fast, almost too fast. "Hey, I figured you'd call. You said my name wasn't in Sam's file." I started, trying to keep my voice calm. Now I'm looking at mine, and it's butchered. He was quiet a beat too long. "I didn't know it was this bad," he said. "But I remember. Someone requested an audit on your file. It was the year after your injury, when you were being transitioned." "Who?" I asked. The word came out clipped. "I thought it was a system flag," he said. "Or a protocol check. I didn't look close. It came from a high-level chain. Sorry, Reese." I didn't answer. The silence between us said enough. I closed the window and let my thoughts slip backward, into a memory I never liked visiting. My last day before deployment. I was standing by the car, duffel bag over my shoulder, boots laced, eyes scanning the driveway for Dad. He came out last. The sun caught the paper in his hand as he approached. "It's just protocol," he said, handing me a folded document already signed. "They need confirmation from the next of kin. That's still me, technically." I didn't read it. I was in a hurry. We all were. I signed it, kissed Mom's cheek, and left. I opened the metadata tab on my file, scrolling down to last modified by. I had to dig through a few logs, bouncing between document versions like walking blind through a minefield. Then it appeared, like a slap to the face. Last edit made by SC_Callahan at mil.army. There was no mistaking it. Initials, domain, departmental tag. My fingers clenched, then shook. I clicked the name to verify. The administrative record blinked, then confirmed the account was tied to active personnel at Fort Redding. Samantha, the only one in our family still in service. The realization hollowed me out. We'd fought growing up. Sure. She'd always been the golden child, the rule follower, the medal collector who never got dirty. I was the one who trained harder, bled more, got noticed by command, but only behind the curtain. Samantha smiled for the cameras. I fixed what she couldn't handle. But to erase me? To rewrite my history? I slammed the laptop shut. My breath caught in my throat as the truth choked its way up. My sister erased my name? I wasn't on the guest list, but I've never needed permission to show up. The valet looked confused when I handed him the keys to a rented Toyota, but he took them anyway, distracted by the line of black cars arriving behind me. The hotel was one of those places with polished stone floors, artificial waterfalls, and chandeliers made to resemble sea glass. Everything glowed in gold and cream, like the world was pretending it had nothing to hide. I walked in slowly, heels soft on the tile, feeling the chill of air conditioning and nerves creeping along my spine. Laughter floated out from the reception hall, along with champagne clinks and the faint notes of a string quartet covering Coldplay. A digital sign by the door said it all in cursive, Samantha and Elliot, together in command. I almost laughed. Just inside, I saw her, Samantha, in a sleeveless navy dress, talking to a group of men in uniform. She looked perfect, of course, sharp, smiling, her hair in that sleek bun that never moved. She turned, caught a glimpse of me across the room, and for the briefest moment her expression faltered. Then she smiled again, thinner this time. Before I could move closer, someone grabbed my arm. "Reese!" my mother hissed under her breath. She was wearing a cream blazer over coral silk, nails done, perfume thick. "What are you doing here?" "I heard there was a party," I said evenly. "Didn't want to miss it?" "You weren't invited," she said, eyes scanning the room. "This is Samantha's night. Don't ruin it." I tilted my head. "I'm just here for the family, to celebrate." Her lips pressed together in a line. "You could have called?" "You don't answer," I said, then pulled gently from her grasp and walked toward the bar. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want to. I just wanted to look her in the eyes. Samantha was introducing someone, tall, clean-shaven, soft-spoken. "This is Elliot," she said. "My fiancé." Then, to him, she added, "This is Reese, my sister who used to serve logistics." There was a beat of silence, just long enough for the insult to land, but not long enough to challenge it. I smiled. "Combat logistics, actually. Some of us got our hands dirty." Elliot offered a polite handshake. Samantha moved on, steering him away like I was a smudge on her sleeve. I turned back to the bar and met eyes with Jonah. He wasn't in uniform tonight. Dark suit, glass of water, like he wanted to blend in. But he stepped close, hand brushing mine as he passed me an envelope without a word. I slipped it into my bag without looking. "What's in it?" I murmured. "Proof," he said. "Photos, certificates, a USB stick. Your originals. No one has this yet." I didn't thank him. I couldn't speak. The party swirled around us, guests laughing, old colleagues smiling with practiced warmth. I stood still in the middle of it, anchored by the envelope pressing against my side. Then I felt the weight of a gaze. Samantha was watching, not smiling this time, just staring. Expression unreadable, mouth frozen, hand clenched loosely around a glass. She had seen the handoff. She still hasn't given up. I wore the uniform longer, bled for it harder, yet I became the ghost. The cafe was buried in a forgotten strip of Jacksonville, tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered barber. No sign out front, just a faded blue flag sticker on the window and a door that creaked like it remembered better times. Inside, the walls were covered in campaign patches, half-torn flyers for VA services, and photos of young soldiers frozen in black and white smiles. Jonah was already there, sitting near the back where the blinds were half closed. He looked tired, but alert. I slid into the seat across from him and pulled out the envelope. The USB was heavier than it should have been. I inserted it into my laptop and waited. The screen flickered, then showed drone footage. Gray silhouettes moving fast across sand, under the harsh contrast of thermal overlay. I leaned forward. A squad pinned under fire. One of the bodies dragged behind cover. The wounded captain. Then a figure sprinting through the open, returning fire, dragging another behind them. Me. There was no doubt. My gait, my gear, the braid tucked under my helmet. My voice crackled through audio, barking orders, calling in air support coordinates. Calm. Controlled. "You saved him," Jonah said softly. "And then I disappeared," I muttered. "They wanted it that way." The waitress brought over 2 coffees and a cinnamon roll someone hadn't ordered. I nodded my thanks, but didn't touch it. Another figure approached. Short hair, sharp eyes, no pretense. Maya. She hadn't changed much. A little leaner, colder maybe. She dropped into the seat beside me like we hadn't missed 4 years. "I don't think you're alive," she said. "Not officially, anyway." I didn't blink. "So, what does that make me?" "An inconvenience." She pulled a small, thin tracker from her coat pocket and slid it across the table. "Use it when you get near Fort Liberty. You'll need eyes in the dark." I stared at it. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I used to owe you," she said. "And because I hate being told who to salute." Jonah leaned back, glancing around the cafe. An old vet in a chair 2 tables over nodded at me. I didn't recognize him, but he saluted. 2 fingers to the brow. I returned it instinctively. Maya sipped her coffee, then lowered her voice. I heard chatter. Someone higher up. They said, "Remove Reese, and Samantha will be promoted as the new icon." I didn't speak. The words coiled around my ribs like barbed wire. It wasn't just personal. It was orchestrated. "Samantha's not working alone," I said. "She's the face." "Not the brain," Maya replied. "I'm not here for revenge," I said after a moment. "I just want the truth seen. Justice. Between people who wear the same suit." Maya looked at me. Unreadable. "Be careful, Reese. If they buried you once, they can do it again. This time, without the medals." I nodded, more to myself than her. I pulled out a map and unfolded it over the table. Maya raised an eyebrow. Jonah leaned in. "That's Fort Liberty." I tapped a red mark near the southern entrance. "I'll go 3 days before the investiture." They took my name. "I'll make sure they never forget it again." Maya's apartment looked more like a war room than a home. The walls were plastered with overlapping maps, timelines printed on A4 sheets, red string running between pins like arteries of a body mid-dissection. Countdown clocks blinked quietly in the corners, some labeled, some not. I'd stepped into ops rooms before, but never one this personal. "Most of this is just noise," Maya said, tapping a board where 4 names circled Samantha's. "What we need is precision." I moved to the table where the USB lay beside old printed certificates and a copy of the original personnel file Jonah had recovered. My name was still faded out of the newer versions, but here, typed clearly, was Captain Reese Callahan. Honors, Operation Night Trace, Kandahar, Distinguished Service Cross. All of it. "I used to sign my name on everything growing up," I said, scanning the file. "Markers, notebooks, even the fridge." I glanced up. "So no one would accidentally take it." Maya smirked. "Looks like you were right to be paranoid." Jonah called just after sunset. Maya put him on speaker. "I spoke to the guy who used to run admin at Fort Barrington," he said. "He remembered you. Said you made too many waves." "Good," I said. "Let's turn those waves into evidence." "You still need legal teeth," he warned. "Maya said you'd found someone?" "She found me," Maya corrected, pointing to the screen where a woman's face now filled the frame. Sharp cheekbones, minimal makeup, hair in a regulation bun. "Brenda." "I don't do favors," Brenda said as soon as the line stabilized. "I do law." "That's why we called," I said. "I have proof, real proof. I want it used right." Brenda didn't smile. "Good. Because the court of public opinion only works when the legal process is airtight behind it." "You want justice?" "You'll need 3 things. Chain of custody, unbroken authentication logs, and a reason the Army can't ignore." "Got it," I said. "When's the right time?" Brenda pulled up a screen on her end. Official seal of the Department of the Army, calendar interface blinking red. "The Army just finalized the promotion schedule," she said. "Samantha's ceremony, Fort Liberty, 5 days from now." I leaned forward and pressed the button on Maya's console. The promotion ceremony document loaded on screen. Confirmed, signed, official. "The schedule has just been officially announced," I said quietly. Game on. Maya tapped a second display. Live camera feed near Fort Liberty's southern entrance. A black car pulled up under the high gates. Out stepped Samantha, her uniform pristine, hair as smooth as her ambitions. She adjusted her lapel and walked inside, flanked by aides. But the timestamp on the feed was wrong. Early. Because I'd already arrived. The camera captures Samantha entering Fort Liberty. Reese was there first. There's a fine line between classified and buried. I just crossed it. Fort Liberty hadn't changed much. Still gray. Still guarded by that watchtower glare that made everyone feel like they were doing something wrong. But this time, I walked inside, not as an officer, not even as a guest, but as a ghost retracing her steps. Maya led the way, her dark hair pulled under a cap, uniform crisp enough to pass for active duty. My badge was an older one, scanned through a revoked clearance code that shouldn't have worked, but thanks to Jonah's quiet manipulation, it beeped green. 10 minutes, she muttered. We walked briskly down the south hallway, past rows of decommissioned lockers and cement walls that hadn't seen sunlight in years. The evidence archive was buried 2 levels beneath the main command room, behind double biometric locks and a keypad panel that pulsed faint blue. Maya placed a thumb against the scanner. It hesitated, then turned green. "You cloned a colonel's thumbprint?" I whispered. "Let's not talk about it," she replied and pushed the door open. Inside, metal shelves stacked with sealed containers, digital terminals blinking faintly beside lockers labeled by operation name and ID code. The air smelled of dust and refrigeration. It was too quiet. I moved toward Terminal D7, the Kandahar mission records. There it was. My name etched into the signature block, along with Commander Hale's. The mission debrief, the drone footage logs, the casualty index, unaltered, untouched. "This is it," I whispered. "This is the original." Maya nodded, pulling out a hardline cable and copying the file into a portable drive with authentication chain intact. Then the door behind us creaked. I turned sharply, hand near my belt, though I had nothing on me but courage and a USB. It was Officer Collins. He froze when he saw me, late 20s now, sharper than I remembered. "Captain Callahan?" he said, stunned. "Not anymore," I answered. He stepped forward slowly, gaze flicking to Maya, then to the terminal. I used to be in your leadership ethics class," he said. "You taught me about silence being complicity." We stared at each other for a breathless second. "I'm not asking you to help," I said quietly. "Just not to stop me." He nodded. I didn't see anything. He turned and walked away. Maya exhaled, then inserted a second USB to cross-check one last file. That's when I saw it. The metadata panel expanded on screen. Timestamp, editor's credential ID, remote IP. The first unauthorized edit on my record was dated exactly 12 years ago. I frowned. Wait. This date? Maya leaned over. Her eyes narrowed. Samantha's birthday. She'd turned 23 that week. Just old enough to sign her first security requisition form. "She started early," I muttered. Erasing me was her first act of command. Just then, the screen flashed red. Email alert. "You've accessed a restricted file. This activity has been reported. Before you burn a house down, you knock once, just to see who's listening." The waiting room outside the main induction hall smelled of pressed uniforms and too many secrets. Military personnel in dress blues mingled with civilians in tailored suits. Laughter came in bursts, awkward and polite. A giant screen on the far wall silently cycled through headlines and highlight reels from old operations, names, medals, promotions. None of mine. I stood quietly by the back column, my posture straight, face unreadable. I could feel the weight of the laminated VIP guest badge clipped to my blazer. A silent miracle of Maya's infiltration. No one questioned it. The name was there. Reese Callahan. Across the room, Carol clutched a glass of sparkling water, her lips taut. Samantha stood near a media rep, camera ready in her fresh major's uniform, the insignia still stiff on her shoulder. Her smile came easy. Too easy. I watched from the periphery as a screen blinked. New footage rolling in from a source labeled Archived Heroism. A quiet ripple passed through the room. There I was, in dust-covered fatigues, dragging a wounded captain across an open zone in Kandahar. The angle was from a drone's thermal cam. No sound, just movement, raw and irrefutable. The same footage the Army had quietly shelved years ago. Until today. A reporter raised an eyebrow. "Major Callahan," he asked, turning. "Isn't that—" Samantha didn't even look at the screen. "That operation," she said smoothly, "was handled by the right people at the right time. Many contributed. It's old history." Her voice only trembled once. On history. I stepped forward. Not to speak. Not to claim. Just to be seen. Jonah caught my eye briefly across the room, but didn't move. This was my step. I nodded once at Carol, then at Samantha. Samantha's smile flickered. Her eyes darted to the screen, then to me, then back to the media. She didn't speak again. Behind me, someone murmured, "Was she invited?" But no one dared ask out loud. My badge answered the question before they could. Jonah moved toward the door, clearly cueing the moment was nearing. I stayed near the rear, just long enough to see the screen flash again. The drone footage paused, and a new frame appeared. The mission report's signature block. Captain Reese Callahan. It hovered there like an accusation. Samantha's lips parted slightly. Her left hand curled into her side. Carol's drink trembled in her grasp. She approached me like a ship-breaking formation, her smile glued on only for the cameras behind her. "What did you come back for, Reese?" she whispered, low and sharp. I didn't blink. "To put everything back in place. Truth doesn't need an invitation, it just needs a witness." The JAG office on base wasn't as intimidating as I remembered. It was colder. Not just from the overworked AC, but from the sterile air of paperwork and internal politics. This was where justice came to wait. Or die. Brenda walked beside me, holding the sealed packet with both hands like it was sacred. Inside, the drone video, campaign logs, metadata proof, and a witness statement signed and time-stamped by Jonah. Everything that mattered, if the law still mattered. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan sat at the head of the long table, expression unreadable beneath rimless glasses. His desk was clear, except for a cup of cold coffee and a worn legal pad. Brenda placed the folder before him without a word. He glanced at it, then at me. "You understand the weight of what you're submitting, Captain Callahan?" "Former captain," I corrected. "And yes, I understand exactly what it means." He nodded once and opened the folder. His eyes scanned quickly, not with disbelief, but efficiency. I watched his fingers tighten slightly on the drone footage still frame, my hand gripping the shoulder of a fallen comrade. "Is this timestamp verifiable?" he asked. "Cross-referenced with base network logs," Brenda replied calmly. "It matches the archived mission directory, one that's been tampered with since. The metadata points to edits initiated by SC Callahan at emil.army. He looked at me again. "Your sister?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "I'll need 48 hours, he said after a pause. "To verify the documents. You'll both be contacted directly once review is complete." We stood to leave, but before we exited the conference room, he added, "Ms. Callahan, thank you. Not everyone brings evidence. Most bring noise." Outside, Brenda's phone buzzed. She stopped mid-step, read the message, then turned to me. "They just moved up Samantha's formal promotion by 24 hours. I blinked. They're trying to beat the clock. Brenda nodded. They want her installed before the system registers your complaint. Once she's in, removing her becomes exponentially harder. They're building a wall, I murmured. Brenda looked at me sharply. Then we need to lay a brick first. That night, back in her office, we logged into the internal military admin portal. The secure drive containing my full service record, unaltered, undisputed, was already prepared. Brenda moved methodically, inputting her clearance codes and setting the file to upload into the shared central repository. The system syncs at 11:59, she said. Once this is in, it'll hit all backups. She hit enter. I watched the screen flicker. Upload complete. File verified. The ripple was irreversible now. Every node on the network would reflect it. Brenda leaned back. Now we wait. And watch. The next morning, as the sun rose over Fort Liberty, my phone buzzed with a message forwarded by Brenda from Harlan's office. It was short. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan to SC Callahan. We need you in the office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Urgent. You can plan every move until they flip the board. I woke up to my name bleeding across headlines I never wanted. Retired Captain Reese Callahan. Mental breakdown or military scandal? Sources say she was removed for instability. Hero or liability? I stared at the screen, jaw locked. They used my old service photo, taken after a 48-hour op, my eyes hollow, face gaunt. The worst image, the most strategic. Brenda had warned me about retaliation. Maya had anticipated noise. But this wasn't noise. This was a surgical strike. Jonah called first. Did you see it? I'm looking at it now. His voice was brittle. It hit the internal network. Even the Academy alumni thread is on fire. Maya sent me a ping moments later. Her message brief. Don't respond yet. I'm tracing the origin. I opened the article again, reading every line. Half-truths. Weaponized omissions. Someone had pulled an incident report from 3 years ago, when I'd been quarantined after a field trauma incident. Standard protocol, not disciplinary. But in this version, it read like a suspension. The quote was fabricated. The worst part? The doubt was working. 2 former squad mates texted me privately, soft messages, cloaked in awkwardness. Didn't know about the suspension. Hope you're okay. Did something happen back in Kandahar? By noon, I received a call from a military reporter who hadn't bothered with subtlety. Captain Callahan, would you like to comment on the growing speculation about your past conduct and psychological evaluations? I would, I said slowly, but I'd prefer to do it in person. She paused. You're not under any current restriction? I'm standing in my apartment, not an institution. Make your own conclusion. Click. Later that afternoon, I stood on the outer steps of Fort Liberty's West Compound. The air was thick, humid, buzzing with whispers and stares. I could feel them watching. Maya arrived, her eyes sharp. Tracked the article source, she whispered. The anonymous account logs in twice a week from the same subnet as the engagement office on base. Carol. I thought she was just protecting Samantha, I muttered. But this is war. Maya handed me a printout, not of the article, but of my original military evaluations. Clean. No suspensions. One note in the margin from a superior. Mentally resolute in high-stress environments. Exhibits independent officer judgment. I held it high. People turned. Eyes fell quiet. I've never been suspended, I said loudly. Not for instability, not for conduct, not for a single goddamn reason. Whispers spread like sparks. From the back of the watching crowd, a man stepped forward. Late 50s, lean, uniform-aged but pressed. Sergeant Vale. He'd served with me during one of our hardest ops. He didn't speak. He saluted, then bowed his head. Others followed. Not all, not many, but enough. And for the first time in days, my knees didn't shake. Sometimes you don't need to win the battle. Just make them play your game. I sat straight in the Army Council meeting room, its sterile lighting doing nothing to mask the tension. My palms were still from hours of practiced control. Beside me, Brenda adjusted her blazer, calm as ever. Across the table, Samantha tapped her pen with just enough rhythm to pass as composed. But I saw the cracks. She wasn't playing defense anymore. She was cornered. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan cleared his throat. This hearing is internal, no media present. We're here to address allegations of file tampering and service misrepresentation, as filed by Captain Reese Callahan. Samantha's jaw barely moved. I stand by my record. Brenda slid forward a stack of printed metadata logs and a flash drive. This is a verified chain of custody showing the edit to Captain Callahan's file, originating from the military address SC Callahan at millarmy. Timestamped, same day as Major Callahan's clearance approval. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Major? Any explanation? Samantha smiled thinly. That address isn't mine. Someone could have used my name. You know the system glitches. I spoke slowly. I served 15 years, 3 campaigns, 4 commendations, and somehow my entire record was downgraded. That's more than a glitch. Jonas sat in the second row. His silence said enough. Brenda opened another file. This is from Reese's deposition, 7 years ago, on the Kandahar incident. You'll find testimony marked with consistency, under oath, across 3 hearings. Not one inconsistency, not one lie. She let it hang for effect, which is more than I can say for what's been presented today. Samantha's foot tapped faster. You're dragging the family through the mud. For what? Old glory? No, I said. For the truth. Harlan held up a hand. Before we proceed, there's one final element. Someone has come forward to contribute additional evidence. The room turned. The side door opened. Officer Collins stepped in, posture crisp, uniform impeccable. He looked older than I remembered from that night in the archive room, but just as steady. He approached the desk with no hesitation and looked at Harlan. Sir, I have a recording, audio and visual. It was obtained during an unsanctioned access into the classified evidence room at Fort Liberty. Samantha stiffened. Carol, who had just entered behind Collins, froze at the mention of unsanctioned. But, Collins added, I will only release this evidence if all 3 Callahans are present in the room, Reese, Samantha, and Carol. Brenda leaned slightly, whispering, and now, checkmate. Not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Some start with a chair pulled out at a table. I pulled mine out slowly, the scrape of the metal legs echoing too loud in the cold hearing room at Fort Liberty. The walls were lined with insignia, flags, and men and women trained to uphold truth, but for the first time in years, I was about to test whether they remembered how. Carol sat stiffly at the opposite end of the table, lips painted with authority. Samantha beside her wore a decorated jacket and her usual smirk, until she saw the device in Collins's hands. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan looked down at the docket. Captain Callahan, you may proceed with your opening timeline. I didn't flinch. 2 years ago, my personnel file was altered. My rank, commendations, and deployment records were either removed or downgraded. The day that edit occurred matches exactly with Major Samantha Callahan's promotion request. I was told it was a clerical error. Until this, I nodded at Collins, came to light. Brenda slid the supporting documentation across the table. This is a sequence of metadata showing that the login used for the edits came from inside the family's registered system terminal, Carol Callahan's home device, used under Samantha's credentials. Samantha leaned forward. Are we just going to assume my email wasn't spoofed? Or maybe my mother left her laptop open? Carol turned toward her sharply. Samantha. I'm just saying, Samantha snapped. This whole thing is based on assumptions. I kept my voice steady. Then listen to the one person who knows for sure. Colin stepped forward. The room hushed. He placed the drive into the terminal and clicked a single file. The screen flickered, then came alive with the soft hum of security audio. Voices emerged, low at first, like a conversation meant to stay buried. "She's not coming back, Mom," Samantha's voice said. "She signed discharge papers. She's a ghost now." Carol's voice responded, sharper. "Then we finish it. I'll make the call. Just let me go. We bury this and make sure your record is clean. She's had her time." Static hissed. Harlan stared at the playback, unmoving. Brenda didn't blink. My hands stayed folded, but I could feel the pulse rising in my fingertips. The tape ended. Silence. Then Carol stood abruptly, her chair scraping behind her. "That's a fabrication. Spliced audio. You expect me to believe that?" She was shaking now. Samantha's fingers were white around the armrest. Harlan held up a hand. "We've already verified the voice print match, Mrs. Callahan, and the fingerprints used to access the edit terminal match yours." The entire room froze. No one from the Department of Defense spoke. No one moved. Not even Jonah, sitting quietly in the back. We weren't done yet. But the game had finally begun. When the lie collapses, it takes everything built on it down too. The walls of the hearing room felt closer now. Maybe it was the heat. Or maybe it was the weight of truth pushing down on everyone inside. Carol Callahan sat rigid, but her right hand trembled slightly where it gripped the folder in front of her. Samantha looked pale under the flickering fluorescence. No metals could shield her now. Brenda stood calmly beside me, the documents in her hand already stained with sweat. Not hers, but from the hands that once tried to bury the truth. She stepped forward, slid the folder onto the table. "This," she began, "is a financial transfer log tied to the department's internal bonus allocation. It traces a redirected budget line into a secondary account belonging to Major Samantha Callahan, an account not listed on her official disclosure." Harlan arched an eyebrow but said nothing yet. The room was breathing slower, heavier. "Attached," Brenda continued, "are emails indicating this bonus was filed just days after Reese Callahan's discharge was made official, without her knowledge or consent." Carol scoffed. "Bonuses are routine." "That's no smoking gun." Brenda didn't flinch. "We didn't say it was. That's why we brought something stronger." I reached into the case and slid out a worn flash drive. Collins took it from me, plugged it in, and turned to the monitor. The video flickered to life, grainy, time-stamped 2018. A young man, Stephen Doyle, Carol's former secretary, stood behind a desk stacked with personnel folders. Carol's voice rang out. "I want you to wipe all references to Reese Callahan. Every deployment, every commendation. Start with digital. If it's not traceable, it never existed." Stephen's nervous nod was visible. "And the hard files?" "We'll handle that later," Carol said off screen. "Just make sure Samantha's dossier shines. She's our legacy now." The video ended. The silence was total. Not even a paper rustled. Samantha bowed her head, lips pressed so tightly they went white. Carol finally found her voice. "This is a deepfake. You expect anyone to believe this was real?" Brenda simply said, "That's why we didn't rely on the video alone." The back door of the chamber opened. Stephen Doyle stepped inside, escorted by 2 officers. He looked older now, tired, but his eyes met mine with something close to regret. "I was there," he said quietly. "I followed her instructions. I took money I didn't earn. I knew it wasn't right, but I was told it was for the good of the family, for Samantha. I regret it. Every part of it." Carol's jaw dropped. Samantha didn't look at him. She couldn't. Reese said nothing. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan stood. The echo of the gavel struck like thunder. "The hearing is adjourned," he said, Effective immediately, Carol Callahan and Major Samantha Callahan are placed under temporary house arrest pending formal charges. Escort them to confinement quarters. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory cry, no fist raised. Just the long exhale of a ghost stepping out into the sun again, finally seen. Justice doesn't arrive with trumpets. It walks in with silence and doesn't leave. The press release went out at dawn. Plain text, white background, no logos. But to me, it sounded louder than a 21-gun salute. The Department of the Army has confirmed evidence of procedural misconduct in the promotion process of Major Samantha Callahan. A full investigation is underway. No names were cleared, no apologies issued. But the lie was finally public. In my office, newly reassigned, freshly named Captain Reese Callahan, I stood over a stack of training manuals I hadn't touched in years. The brass badge I once had to hide was now mounted on the door outside. A soft ping vibrated from my desk. It was a video. Maya's name lit up the screen. I pressed play. Clips cascaded in rapid fire. Soldiers, civilians, cadets. One held a cardboard sign that read, "Numbered Justice for Reese." Another, in uniform, simply looked at the camera and saluted. No voiceovers, no narration. Just proof. Proof I hadn't disappeared. Proof someone was watching. Outside, Fort Liberty was still a machine of uniformed movement. But somewhere in its shadows, Carol Callahan sat behind a barred door, not yet sentenced, but officially detained. Her cell was small, temporary, a holding pattern before the charges landed. Brenda called just after lunch. They've removed Samantha from active duty, effective immediately. Her office has been reassigned. I closed my eyes. It didn't feel like a win. Just like a bone being reset after years of dislocation. That afternoon, I stood in front of the very training room I'd once been forced to leave. The air smelled the same: paper, boot polish, coffee too strong. But today, no one called security when I stepped in. Lieutenant Colonel Harlan nodded at me. "They're expecting you." Dozens of young cadets turned as I walked to the podium. Notebooks open, uniforms crisp, all eyes forward. I didn't have a speech. I had a story. "I won't tell you how to survive betrayal," I began, "because that's not what this place teaches. This place teaches clarity, loyalty, consequence. Sometimes those lessons are taken away before you can earn the badge." A few heads nodded. No one interrupted. I stepped back and let the silence breathe. Then, from the second row, a hand rose. A young woman, probably 20, dark eyes sharp. "Ma'am," she asked, "what do you think about fame?" I looked straight at her. "It's not given," I said, voice steady. "It's earned, sometimes twice. You can silence a voice, but you can't silence what it stood for." The court-martial chamber had no windows, just hard white light, polished floors, and walls too clean to remember history. But today, justice filled every corner. Carol sat at the defendant's table, her posture stiffer than her uniform used to be. Her eyes never met mine. The verdict came down like quiet thunder. Carol Callahan, found guilty of willful manipulation of military records, abuse of command authority, and financial misconduct. You are hereby stripped of your military citizenship. Your pension and assets are frozen pending further inquiry. A pause. Samantha Callahan, due to complicity and concealment, is hereby dishonorably discharged. You are barred from re-enlistment or future employment in any defense capacity. Samantha didn't speak, didn't cry. She only lowered her head, lips pressed into a pale, furious line. It was the first time I'd seen her truly still. I felt no satisfaction, only breath and weight, lifted. They called me forward next. For the extraordinary resilience and unwavering integrity shown in defense of both truth and honor, the officer read aloud. The Department of Defense hereby awards Captain Reese Callahan the Resilience and Integrity Medal. Applause broke out. Veterans in uniform, cadets in their first week of boots, journalists scribbling notes they wouldn't fully understand. I stood still for a beat, then stepped to the podium. I had rewritten my speech 10 times, thrown them all away. I used to think silence was dignity, I said. That swallowing injustice was how you stayed strong. I was wrong. I let that breathe. Honor isn't given. It's not inherited. And it can't be stolen without a fight. What was taken from me wasn't just my name. It was the belief that no one would stand beside me. Today, you've proved that belief false. I scanned the room, caught Jonah's calm eyes, Maya's nod, Brenda's faint smile. To those who still wear the uniform, justice that comes late is not a failure. It's proof that we are not silent. The clapping came in waves, controlled, then rising again. I bowed my head, then turned, just once, to see Carol being led out of the courtroom. No cuffs, no fight, just the absence of power where once it ruled. Outside in the corridor, a young woman, barely more than a girl, stepped from the crowd. "Captain Callahan," she said, voice trembling, "what if they smear me again?" I looked at her, stepped closer. "Then don't just stand," I said softly. "Rise louder." The truth didn't come with noise or spectacle. It arrived in silence, wearing the uniform they tried to strip from her, and walked into the same halls that once erased her name. Reese Callahan didn't need a parade. She needed a table, a voice, and a room that could finally hear her. Not as a shadow of someone else's success, but as the woman who had survived being buried alive by the very institution she once bled for. What was taken from her wasn't just a title or a medal. It was dignity, trust, and the right to exist in a history she helped build. They deleted her files, they rewrote records, they replaced honor with ambition. But in the end, lies don't carry the weight of proof. She did. Step by step, document by document, Reese didn't demand revenge. She demanded recognition. And when the council stood to applaud, it wasn't just for her victories. It was for every moment she kept standing when the system asked her to disappear. Justice doesn't always come dressed in triumph. Sometimes it looks like a quiet seat at the table. Sometimes it's a soldier walking back into the room that once exiled her, and being met not with shame, but with silence that says, "We see you now." Reese didn't shout. She didn't beg. She rose. And when she spoke, the silence broke in her favor. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but once it's heard, it never fades. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And perhaps, in a world that often rewards betrayal, the most defiant act is simply to rise and remain. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your name is to make it unforgettable. Thank you for staying until the end of Reese Callahan's story. A story not just about medals or courtrooms or military ranks, but about silence. And what happens when that silence is broken. If you've ever felt erased, by family, by a system, by the people meant to stand beside you, this story was for you. Because the truth is, erasure doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like your name missing from a guest list, a message thread that never pings your way, a record quietly edited until you no longer exist on paper. But names carry weight, not because someone else says so, but because of what we survive, what we build, and what we refuse to let go of. Reese didn't come back for glory. She didn't come back to burn it all down. She came back for one reason: to make sure no one else had to carry that silence alone. And if you're still here, watching, I want to thank you, truly, for taking the time to hear a story that isn't always easy, for honoring someone who fought not on a battlefield, but inside a system that once tried to forget her. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Share it with someone who needs reminding. You do not have to accept the version of your story others try to write for you. You can stand up. You can speak. Or you can stay silent, but with strength, not surrender. Because in the end, justice doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it walks in quietly, takes its seat back at the table, and simply stays. Thank you again for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself. Protect your name. Protect your truth. And never forget, even the quietest voice can carry weight when it refuses to disappear.